Most people lose the most important battles of their life before those battles even begin. Not because they were weak, not because they were wrong, because the second the pressure hit, they couldn't stop talking. Watch closely enough, and you'll see it everywhere. The explanation nobody asked for. The defense offered before an accusation is even finished. The words spilling out, filling silence like it's something dangerous, something that needs to be covered up immediately. And every single time that person hands away power they didn't even know they were holding. Here's the truth before we go further. This will only work for the few of you who can actually sit inside discomfort without rushing to fill it. Most of you will click away by minute 3, because what I'm about to teach you is uncomfortable to practice. That's fine. This isn't for most people. 3 men, separated by more than 2,000 years, with no knowledge of one another, arrived at the exact same conclusion. A Roman Stoic, a Florentine political strategist, a Chinese general. Different centuries, different empires, same discovery. Picture someone sitting in a meeting, blindsided by an accusation they never saw coming. Their heart rate spikes. Their mouth moves before their mind catches up. They over-explain, over-justify, over-perform their own innocence, and the room feels it instantly. Respect drains out of that space the moment the talking starts. The wolf doesn't announce the hunt. Remember that line, because you're going to need it. But knowing that silence is powerful, and knowing exactly when to use it, those are 2 very different skills. Most people never learn the difference. That's exactly where we start. We live inside a culture engineered to punish patience. Reply instantly. React instantly. Defend yourself instantly, or the internet decides the silence was a confession. Every notification is a demand for your voice, right now, before you've had time to think. And most people obey it. The naive majority still believes silence equals guilt, or weakness, or that something is wrong with the person who isn't explaining themselves. They've been trained to see restraint as absence instead of what it actually is. The awake few see it differently. They understand something almost nobody else does. Silence is the one resource that can never be taken from you. Your money can be stolen. Your reputation can be manipulated. Your words, once spoken, can be twisted and used against you forever. But your silence, that stays entirely yours, entirely under your control, for as long as you choose to keep it. There's a reason researchers have spent decades studying exactly what happens inside the human brain when someone goes quiet on another person. What they found will change how you see every relationship in your life. But first, let's break down the first rule almost nobody follows. Here's the first rule, and almost nobody follows it. Silence isn't a permanent state. It's a season. And the people who wield real power aren't silent all the time. They simply know exactly when the season calls for words, and when it calls for nothing at all. Seneca the Elder put it in a single line that survived 2,000 years for a reason. It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence. Read that again. Not the ability to speak or stay silent, the knowledge of which season you're standing in. That's the actual skill. Most people never learn to ask the question in the first place. Picture a family dinner. Someone at the table drops a comment designed to bait you, a jab about your choices, your career, your relationship, wrapped just enough in humor that if you react, you're the one who can't take a joke. The naive version of you takes it instantly. You defend yourself, you explain. You win the argument, point by point, in front of everyone at that table, and you walk away having won absolutely nothing. Because the moment you engaged, you confirmed the bait worked, you showed the room exactly where your pressure points are. You spent your energy proving something to people who were never going to change their minds anyway. That's the trap the naive majority falls into, again and again, reacting on impulse to every single provocation. As if every comment is a debate that must be settled on the spot. The disciplined person does something almost invisible from the outside. Before a single word leaves their mouth, they ask one question. Does this moment actually need my voice? Or does it need my patience? That's it. That's the entire filter. And most of the time, provocation fails that test completely. Understand this clearly. Every word you speak in the wrong season costs you leverage you cannot buy back. Once it's said, it's out of your hands forever, repeated, twisted, used as ammunition in a fight you didn't even mean to start. Silence spoken too early is wasted. Words spoken too early are worse. They're a debt you didn't know you were taking on. This is why the wise and the ruthless alike guard their timing like a weapon. Not because they're passive, not because they're afraid, because they understand that the wrong season turns even the truth into a liability. But timing alone won't protect you. Knowing when to speak means nothing if you can't survive the moment someone is actively trying to provoke you into breaking first. Timing is one thing when the room is calm. It's an entirely different test when someone is standing in front of you, trying to knock you off balance on purpose. This is where the real skill gets separated from the theory, because anyone can stay quiet when nothing is threatening them. Almost nobody can stay quiet when they're under attack. Epictetus, one of the sharpest minds Stoic philosophy ever produced, said it plainly: silence is safer than speech. Not more comfortable. Not easier. Safer, he understood something most people never grasp until it costs them, that in the heat of conflict, your mouth becomes the most dangerous weapon pointed at yourself. Picture this. Someone insults you publicly. Maybe it's in front of coworkers, maybe in front of family, maybe online where the whole world can watch. Every instinct in your body screams at you to respond, to correct them, to defend your name in real time before anyone believes what was just said about you. And then picture the version of you who says nothing at all. Watch. What happens? The insult hangs there, alone in the open air, with nothing propping it up. No defense to argue with, no reaction to feed off of. It simply sits there, exposed, until the room starts to notice something uncomfortable, that the accuser is the only one still talking. The weak feel compelled to protect their ego the instant it's threatened, responding on reflex because the silence feels unbearable. The powerful let the moment breathe. They understand that a reaction handed to an attacker in real time is a gift. Proof the shot landed, proof you can be provoked on command. Here's the part almost nobody wants to hear. Most people will never master this. The urge to defend yourself is primal, and overriding it takes a level of self-command most people simply never build. Which is exactly why it works so well on the ones who haven't. If you've ever bit your tongue in a moment like this and watched it pay off more than any argument ever could, comment the word restraint below. I want to see how many of you have already lived this. Understand what restraint actually is in this moment. It isn't weakness. It isn't avoidance. It's the decision to let someone else's words define them instead of you. But restraint only protects you in the moment itself. It stops the bleeding. Real power runs deeper than surviving one confrontation. Real power comes from controlling something far more valuable than your reaction, who gets access to your thinking in the first place. Surviving the attack is only step one. The deeper question is why you were exposed enough to be attacked in the first place, and more often than not, the answer traces back to how much access you handed out before anyone earned it. Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone who's ever written about power. In The Prince, he advised that a ruler should take counsel only at the times and from the people he chooses himself, never letting his thinking become something anyone can walk into uninvited, not because he distrusted everyone, because he understood that unguarded access to your reasoning is unguarded access to you. Picture someone with a goal, a career move, a business idea, a plan to finally leave a situation that's been draining them for years, and instead of protecting it while it's still fragile, they announce it. To the group chat, to the extended family, to every acquaintance who asks what's new with you out of habit, not genuine interest. Watch what happens next. The plan gets picked apart before it's even taken its first real step. Someone finds a reason to doubt it out loud. Someone else quietly repeats it to people who were never meant to hear it. And by the time that person is actually ready to move, half the room has already formed an opinion, a judgment, sometimes even a plan of their own built on what they overheard. The naive believe transparency earns trust, that the more you share, the more connected you become. Sometimes that's true. But the awake understand something sharper. Access you haven't verified is access you can't control. Trust isn't proven by how much you reveal. It's proven by what someone does with what little you've given them. This is usually where people get nervous, because withholding can feel like something close to cruelty, like you're shutting people out, keeping secrets, building walls where there should be closeness. Drop a wolf emoji below if you've learned the hard way that not everyone deserves access to your plans. Let's be honest about where the real line sits. This isn't about deceiving the people who love you or treating everyone like a threat. It's about recognizing that your reasoning, your unfinished plans, your private doubts, these aren't owed to anyone simply because they asked. Earned counsel is different from demanded access. One protects a relationship, the other quietly disarms you. Guard the room where your thinking happens. Not because the world is your enemy, but because not everyone standing in it has earned the right to watch you build. Everything we've covered so far has been philosophy, tested by centuries of survival. Now let's talk about the science. Because this next part isn't opinion, and it isn't ancient theory. It's peer-reviewed, and it will explain something you've probably felt in your own body without ever having the words for it. Kipling D. Williams, a psychologist at Purdue University, spent decades studying what happens inside the human brain during ostracism, being ignored, excluded, or cut off. His research, published in the Annual Review of Psychology, found something remarkable. Being shut out activates the same neural pain circuitry as a physical injury. Not a metaphor. Not it feels like pain. The brain registers it the same way it registers a wound. Picture someone who was cut off by a friend or a partner without a single explanation. No argument. No closure. Just silence, stretching out indefinitely. They don't just feel confused, they feel it physically. A tightness in the chest. A restlessness that won't settle. Their mind replays the last conversation on a loop, searching for the moment everything shifted, because the body is responding to something it registers as real injury. The naive believe only words can hurt or heal someone, that as long as nothing cruel is said out loud, no real harm has been done. The awake understands something far more unsettling. Absence of response is a message all on its own, often louder than anything that could have been said. Now hear this clearly, because it matters more than anything else in this video. This science explains why silence carries so much weight. It does not hand you permission to use that weight as a weapon against people who don't deserve it. Understanding this mechanism is not the same as exploiting it to punish someone, manipulate someone, or make someone suffer simply because you can. A scalpel and a knife are the same shape. What separates them is the hand holding it and the reason it's being used. This is exactly where the path splits. Some people learn this and use it to finally protect their own peace. To stop over-explaining themselves to people who never listened. To stop handing out access that was never earned. Others learn this same lesson and become something else entirely. Cold, calculating, using silence to punish the people who love them, mistaking cruelty for control. Which brings us to the real difference, the line between the ones who wield this with integrity and the ones who slowly become the very thing they were originally trying to protect themselves from. That difference, integrity versus manipulation, becomes clearest in the final piece of this puzzle. Because when silence is used correctly, it doesn't make you cold, or distant, or hard to reach. It makes you something far more valuable. It makes you someone people trust, without needing to know why. Leonardo da Vinci understood this centuries before anyone studied it in a lab. Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence. Not volume. Not certainty announced loudly to the room. Silence, because authority was never about how much space your voice takes up. It's about how much weight your words carry when you finally choose to use them. Picture two leaders standing in the middle of a crisis. The first fills every second of silence with talking, reassurances, explanations, updates nobody asked for, because the quiet in the room feels unbearable to them, and they mistake noise for leadership. The second says almost nothing. They observe. They let the tension sit. And when they finally speak, every person in that room leans in. Because they've learned that this person doesn't waste words. That's the entire difference. The weak use volume to cover uncertainty, hoping enough words will disguise the fact that they don't actually have control. The powerful let scarcity do the work for them. When you rarely speak, every sentence you do say instantly carries more weight, not because the words themselves changed, but because you did. And here's something worth saying directly. Whether you're 20 years into your career or 70 years into your life, this is a skill you can start building starting today. It doesn't require youth. It doesn't require reinvention. It only requires discipline, the willingness to sit in a moment a little longer before you fill it. This is the quiet difference between the person everyone forgets in the room and the person everyone remembers walking out of it. Not louder, not more talkative, just more deliberate, in a world that has forgotten what deliberate even looks like. Authority built this way doesn't fade the moment you stop talking, because it was never built on talking in the first place. It was built on the simple, unshakable fact that you don't feel the need to prove yourself to every room you walk into. Now let's bring all 5 of these together, because on their own, each one is useful. Combined, they become something far more dangerous. Let's bring it together. 5 weapons, hiding in plain sight the entire time. Seneca taught you timing, knowing the season for speech and the season for silence, so your words never bleed value into a moment that doesn't deserve them. Epictetus taught you restraint under fire, surviving provocation without handing your reaction to the person trying to provoke it. Machiavelli taught you to guard the council room, protecting your reasoning and your plans until they're strong enough to survive contact with other people. William's research showed you the real weight silence carries, proof that what you withhold lands as powerfully as what you say. And Da Vinci showed you the final layer, that silence, used consistently, becomes authority itself. Here's the pattern underneath all 5. The naive spend their entire lives explaining themselves to people who were never going to listen anyway, defending their worth to audiences who already made up their minds. The awake save their words. They spend them rarely, and only where they matter. But there's one more thing you need to understand before you walk away from this. Power without a conscience behind it isn't power at all. It's just another way to get hurt, or become the reason someone else does. So let's be clear about what this actually is, because it matters more than everything that came before it. This was never a lesson in becoming cold. It was never permission to cut people off, punish the people who love you, or treat silence as a weapon to control someone into compliance. That isn't strength. That's just losing control dressed up as discipline. And if you walk away from this using silence to hurt people, you've missed the entire point. What this actually gives you is quieter than that, and far more valuable. Permission to stop performing your pain for people who never valued it in the first place. Permission to stop explaining yourself to rooms that already decided not to listen. Permission to protect your thinking, your timing, your peace, without needing anyone's approval to do it. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. Whether you're just beginning to build this skill, or you've spent decades as the one who always explained, always defended, always filled the silence for everyone else, it starts the same way. Today, with one moment you choose not to fill. The wolf doesn't announce the hunt. And neither do you anymore. If this is the first time someone's told you your silence was never weakness, comment "I know now" below. I want to see how many of you needed to hear this today. If this found you today, it found you for a reason. Before you go, ask yourself one question. Who in your life have you been over-explaining yourself to, when their opinion was never going to change no matter what you said? Sit with that. Don't answer it out loud. Just know it. If this video shifted something in you, subscribe, because what comes next builds directly on everything you just learned. If you've ever wondered what the people who talk too much are actually revealing about themselves without even realizing it, that's exactly what we're breaking down next. Until then, remember this: the wolf doesn't announce the hunt.